Freedom, freedom, freedom over fame. Freedom over cycle stays the same.
Unique New York. Unique New York.
What's the one that other people do? They go like, nope, I can't do it.
I'm trying to figure out what you are doing.
You know when people like vibrate their lips, they do the. Yeah, I just rolled my R's. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Band Together. I'm one of your co-hosts, Adri.
And we have Jeanna and Adriana in the house.
And Paramore's snoring on the couch. So if you hear her, no, you didn't. It's been a minute since we've recorded, and we've absolutely missed you. And has anything happened since the last time we recorded? Not that I can think of.
Yeah, no, nothing major.
Nothing huge.
Nothing crazy that's perhaps life-altering.
Life-altering is a way to put that. But we're back, and we're really excited to share with you. We had originally left the last episode saying that we were going to read Wicked, and we did. And then we didn't do an episode on it. And then we watched the movie, and we love the movie. But we're not here for Wicked today. We moved on.
Yeah, Wicked is a difficult read.
It was hard.
It's a lengthy read. It can be very slow. And
troubling.
And there were some troubling things about it. But mostly we want to be productive in episodes, right? And after reading it, we didn't think we were going to be very productive. Love the movie, but we did move on to 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult.
It was an amazing... you know what? I need to find another...
It's amazing.
Another way to describe books.
It's amazing.
It was a really thought-provoking and compelling book. I'll say that. I was not familiar with Jodi Picoult, and now I want to read more of her books. So that's saying something.
Yeah, and I think it's super funny because the reason why we are covering this book is because it's the most banned book of 2024. The Little Sister We Left Behind. No need to make that face. How dare you?
What a weird way to explain a year.
I don't know. It was the first thing that came to mind. Just because I feel like 2025 is going to be Big Brother.
I don't know what you're doing with yourself right now.
It just feels very government-centric. Big Brother, you know?
Yeah. A little bit about me. I've been in a daze ever since November 5th.
Yeah.
And I have not really been able to get myself out of it. I feel like I have just developed better masking skills about how I'm feeling. Numb is one way.
Mm-hmm.
Terrified is another.
Mm-hmm.
And introspective is another. And I think I'm doing the best that I can. I'm showing up the best that I can for myself, the people that I love, and right now, you guys. So bear with me if we are a little casual, a little lighthearted about very serious topics. We've been doing what we can to take care of our own mental health and take care of each other as things evolve around us. It's not a shock that either Jeanna or I have strong feelings about what happened on November 5th. And then today we're at the end of January. So the new administration has come, has presented themselves. And we've had tough conversations with family members. We've had strained friendships arise and just a general feeling of unsafety. So we're going into this episode talking about a really heavy book, and then we are going to cover a few of the things that we find important in what has happened since January 20th has happened. But we're also going to do our best to take care of each other and take care of you guys along the way and try to bring a little bit of light in what is truly a very bleak time in human history, a really scary time in human history. We hope that this creates, as always, a safe space for you to exist, get a little bit of an update, and get a little bit of an escape.
Yeah, and we don't try to be, we're as authentic with you guys as we can be because we're all just processing things. So when we come to the podcast, there's a lot of different ways that we are gaining information, building community, etc. This is one of the ways that we build community. And although it is a really scary and unstable time, particularly for marginalized groups, we just want you to know that right now is the time to focus on community. Right now is the time to acknowledge our emotions and then be as strong as we can and unify. And that's what I really am going to try to focus on going forward, because though the orange Cheeto is, we all know what he is, but I do know what he's not as well. And what he's not is competent. What he's not is a representative of all of us. So knowing that, and knowing that half of America still feels the way that we feel, probably more, just don't feel alone out there. It can be a little overwhelming, but again, that's why we're here. So just stick with us.
Yeah, and we are going to talk about social media bans, and we are going to talk about the TikTok ban. That's
oh my gosh.
And I want to acknowledge our presence has been largely due to Jeanna and her efforts and her continual push to be online. And we're just two girls trying to survive life and have a podcast. And so we're exploring the idea of being on different platforms. I know we're now on Red Note.
Oh gosh, I love Red Note so much.
I know. But we've decided we're never going to do Instagram. It's not going to happen for us.
Yeah. And I think everybody understands why. But we are exploring the good thing that happened with TikTok pulling a really weird stunt is that a lot of different TikTok-like platforms are blooming from it. So things like Neptune and other ones like We the People. Anyway.
Yeah. But I do want to share with everyone our Gmail, just in case anyone ever wants to get a hold of us, has feedback on an episode, wants to give us book recommendations, really anything. Right now, we're just really figuring out how to stay in communication now that we realize that it's just like a snap of a finger and they can take our community away.
Diversify.
Yeah. So that's going to be the Band Together podcast at gmail.com. Now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and dig into the nitty gritty of this book.
Yeah. Can I start?
Yeah, please do.
All right. So I actually have read a few books by Jodi Picoult. Yes.
Guys, we have also... Okay, so I already read all of ACOTAR.
Yes.
And Gina's now reading all of ACOTAR.
I'm almost done.
And it's not today. It's not a today thing, but just know it's coming.
It's our next episode.
And I'm on Onyx Storm right now for anyone who's read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. We have been doing so much to take care of our mental health. Okay, back to it.
All right. So I have read a few books by Jodi Picoult. And in the background, Adriana's been reading the ACOTAR series. Now she's moved on to Fourth Wing. So it's very fairy-esque, right? It's very magic. It's giving...
Smutty.
Yeah, it's giving smutty magic, right? But she took intervals in between reading those books, and she started reading 19 Minutes and really just blasted through it because it's so good.
It was way better than I expected it to be. Some of the books that we read have been, some of them have been sad.
Yeah. What?
This one is not an exception. This one is really heartbreaking and really internally confusing to me because of the subject matter and then the empathy that I felt for certain characters. But Jodi Picoult's style of writing is so cool because she does these really quick pans to different characters. And so you're looking at one scene or event through multiple characters' perspective. And so it was really interesting. So I powered through it because it was a really interesting way to read something.
Yeah. And I've always loved that about her writing. I feel like not every writer has this quality. The good writers do, right? But Jodi Picoult excels at the human perspective and really the complexities of humanity, because all of her books have this layered, and she writes all of them very similarly. You might know her from My Sister's Keeper, which is just a fucking heart-wrenching.
Also a band book.
Yeah. And such an interesting topic there, a very gut-wrenching scenario. like The Pact, things like that. She's just done a lot of really great things. But what I see from all her books as somebody who is both a super huge fan of humanity and a super huge critic of humanity, I feel like she covers the full spectrum that is a human being and the complicated scenarios to which we interact with each other in a format of fiction. To have a writer who just sees people feeds me. And I feel like it's so enlightening to people who have a hard time with outside perspective, who maybe...
Yeah, I can see that because it really puts you in people's shoes.
In such a way that the complexities of the characters, it's really hard, I think, if somebody who is maybe not naturally empathetic and they begin to read a book like this, you go to the end of it, and by the end, it's undeniable to see the different perspectives.
Yeah, but that is like the danger of reading, right? It's to give you, to humanize each other, to humanize someone who's different from us.
To walk in a different person's shoes, of course.
Right. So she nails it, like spot on that. Let's just get into what the subject matter is. I think we've teased everyone enough. For anyone who hasn't read the book, would you like
to talk about it? Yeah, totally. Yeah. The reason why this is a difficult read is because it's essentially her take on a storyline that's based on a school shooting of a high school. And the story follows multiple perspectives, including the shooter, Peter Houghton. He's a bullied teenager, right? And Josie Cormier, she's a popular girl, and she's got a super complicated connection to Peter. They were childhood friends. And Alex is Josie's mother, who is also the judge presiding over the case after Peter shoots up the school. The novel's going to explore themes of obviously bullying, the complexities of relationships, and the rippling effects of trauma. It raises a lot of moral and ethical questions about guilt, responsibility, and how often society fails to address the root causes of violence. Because as you can assume, Peter's getting bullied from pretty much the moment that he's alive. Like pretty much the moment that he enters a school setting.
Right. It's actually really the very first day that I started reading this book, I went to work and I was talking to someone who used to be a librarian and was like, you need to read this book. However, she has a teenage son in high school right now. And she was like, maybe it's a later read because it's such a hard topic, right? And I was telling her a little bit about it, and I'll say it in the same way. It starts the few minutes leading into the shooting and then immediately cuts to Peter Houghton's first day of school ever, like kindergarten or something like that. And so as angry as you want to be with the shooter, because obviously like a school shooter is not someone that normally gets empathy from people because they kill people or they hurt people, you're immediately faced with a 5-year-old and what they're going through and how scary and hard that was. And so her writing was it was a really sad mirror to look into about how involved it is and how desperate someone has to feel to take these kinds of actions. And I think I understand. I don't agree with it, obviously, but I understand why someone who doesn't want critical thinking would want to ban a book like this, because it's a hard conversation to have if you're not going to address gun control, right? Because it's easy to blame the person who's shooting the gun, and yet no one's taking the gun away.
Yeah, and nobody's addressing where the gun came from.
Where the gun came from. We have a lot of resources right now, more than ever, thankfully. And the topic of mental health has been widely accepted for a long time now, but still we don't have enough resources in place to help people with mental health issues.
Not like that, because and I think you're so right about let's blame the person, right? And I'm 100% on board with that, because people do have to take responsibility in every situation. A person has to take responsibility for their own actions and the fact that they decided to wake up and do that. Okay. Like there are people who are not alive. This is obviously not a real scenario, but the slap in the face is that this happens in America all the time. But we have to acknowledge that these kids or these people, these humans are taking away another human life. And that is a situation that people have to process in different ways, right? But when we look at the whole timeline of this person's life and all of these, and that's what I really love about this book too, because she highlights these little micro interactions or maybe macro interactions that contributed to the decision that he made on that day, that contributed to the lack of empathy, that contributed to, or even the way that his parents treated certain situations, which one of the things that
that's a good one to bring up.
Because his mom, as a reaction to him getting bullied, decided to tell him that if he didn't stand up for himself, he wouldn't be able to see his friend who was Josie in an elementary school setting.
Right.
And what a strange, and from her perspective, do you remember it?
Yeah, I think that this is complicated because I'm not a parent. So I'm not going to pretend to know what a parent what most parents would do or what even I would do with action.
I wouldn't do that. I can tell you that confidently.
You want to tell your kid to stand up for themselves. But at the same time, like punishing them for being bullied is not exactly the solution. I don't know. For me, it was so complicated. It was so conflicting to, what's the word? It challenged my idea of what justice is. Because, again, we're talking about someone who killed people. We're talking about someone who was a school shooter, who did one of the worst things that they can do, right? Which is go into an institution that's supposed to be a place that's safe for kids.
Adolescents.
And they like took that away forever. But then we also know his history and his life and his fears. And did the school fail him? Did society fail him?
Yes.
Did his parents fail him?
Yes.
And why is he the one on trial then?
Yeah.
Those are all the questions that came up to me. And this is why I really love doing this too, is because then I go, can literature like 19 Minutes be an effective tool for social change? And obviously, yes. And if so, why are we working so hard? Not we. Why are people working so hard to limit access to stuff like this? I understand that this is a really difficult read. And again, I completely empathize and I agree with a colleague of mine not wanting to read it because it's too close to home. And I respect that. But she at least has a choice to read it and not have it taken off of shelves because someone deems it too controversial, right?
And the theme that we're always discussing, which is it's obvious, or at least it's obvious to us, and hopefully it's obvious to others, that the reason why this book was banned is not because of the claims that it was too violent, is not because of the claims of sexuality, it's not because of the superficial claims that they like to tell us about all of these books, but it's to us, or at least to me, I'll speak for myself, it's mostly about the fact that they just don't like critical thinking. They don't want people to think about this huge perspective of the situation. Because in real life, does a Peter Houghton deserve to go to jail? Absolutely. But do we also acknowledge that there are contributing factors to the demonizing of this boy who is a boy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can. Both things are true. And there are always spoilers in our episodes, but the most interesting relationship to me was obviously Josie and Peter because they had history. And then she becomes popular and then basically tosses him aside because she's so afraid to be associated with him in her high school years.
Yeah.
I know that you had a lot of thoughts about her boyfriend who she ended up dating, Matt.
He was just a pretty stereotypical dick. And I just felt so helpless reading the story, knowing where it was going to go and seeing from a bird's eye view all the places that adults failed him. That was really hard.
Yeah. And that's because you're taking this journey from his perspective, right? And then there's also that part of you that's like, no, just be stronger. Just be strong. And there was one line in the book that I won't forget, which is his mom reflecting and going, all of the attributes that make him easy to pick on right now are going to be all of the attributes that make him successful in his 30s. But it's so hard to explain that to an adolescent kid who's getting his ass kicked every day.
Yeah.
Like,
and I never got to go through that. I never went through that. And I'm really thankful for that. But God, that sounds fucking hard.
mhm.
This book the layout for me was really similar to a movie. I know you've never seen it because we've talked about it, but it came out in 2020. It's called Promising Young Woman.
I've heard of it.
And it's basically the same kind of idea of like some social injustice happens. And then there's some vigilante that goes through the same story, different subject.
Mm-hmm.
In Promising Young Woman, it's a girl and her friend got raped.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes on her own vigilante journey to get
Mm-hmm.
justice. And it's funny because it's the same thing. It's how far is too far. But really, the whole time through, you're watching how many people dismiss her and dismiss her want for justice. And it's the same thing with this. There are so many times that he does reach out for help.
Totally.
And he just gets skeet skirted around, or he gets pushed to the side, or he gets someone explaining it away or putting the blame on him. And yeah, I understand why this is a hard book for a lot of people to read, but I really loved it.
Yeah. And I think the most interesting thing about the book is really Josie and Peter's interaction, because what he was looking for that whole time, to your point earlier, was friendship.
Yeah.
That's connection.
It's like his downfall at the end, actually.
Just caring, because she ends up dating his biggest bully, which is super complicated, right? Because Peter still looks at her as like this friend and a little bit more, obviously.
Yeah, right.
There's also a point where he goes through questioning his own sexuality, because I feel like when you're an adolescent, sometimes that doesn't kick in super early.
So much of that actually, it's not something that like ties into the bigger scheme of the storyline truly to me, but it's so big because he really is like unsure. And then I think it's the lawyer at the end is like, he's the straightest kid I've ever met, you know? But it just goes to show how complicated sexuality can be for someone, especially at that age when they're not sure.
Yeah. And it just being I feel like I was a late bloomer.
I was a super late bloomer, but I did have those conflicting feelings really early on, and I just brushed them away as well.
And then I feel like for us, it's different as we are now gay. So perhaps we're more of a testament to homosexuality than we are heterosexuality.
Sorry.
Don't we all have those weird feelings that we bury deep down inside until we're in our 30s and then we find a girlfriend?
That's right. I am gay now. I sometimes like to think that I'm bi because I'm like, oh, I find men like somewhat attractive, especially like reading like Smerry Foot.
Smerry Foot. I like it. I want to call it Smerry Foot from now on.
Especially in reading some like fairy smut, not the ones you've been reading because those are a little different, but like Fourth Wing is really good. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But then I'm like, just the thought. I just can't.
No. It's not for me.
It's not for me, dog.
I did it for too long.
I did it into my 30s.
I said no, thank you. But it's, I think,
though.
Yeah. And the thing is that sexuality is a spectrum. But I think that attractive people are also just attractive people.
Right.
And if that is some people, we can recognize that in a male form, we can recognize that in a female form, or anybody in between. And I think that's
spoken like a demisexual.
Yeah. Which for all the audience, I do identify as a demisexual. But still, the idea of ever being with a man again is not for me. In fact, now when I look at typically attractive heterosexual Hollywood stars, it's just too tired.
No, actually, here's the funniest thing is that the people that I think are attractive, you have pointed out, look like lesbians.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's true.
Like the effeminate men. If you have any sort of like a slender physique that has a few muscles and like a pretty face as a man, I'm tired of it. There's not a whole lot of male figures out there that are going to be impressive to me. Like I'm over it. You know what I mean? Like I get it.
Be over it, girl. Be over it.
But yeah, getting back to the book, just really, Jodi Picoult is just amazing. And it did really...
Her writing style was really captivating. It really kept me tied in. It really kept me like wanting to know more.
Mm-hmm. And I'll always be a huge fan of hers. And the person that she is an advocate. She's not afraid to tackle these issues and maybe rub people the wrong way. And I admire that because it really is. I think when we stop talking about issues is when we stop forward progression. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that just is what it is. Another reason why this story came a little close to home was because I actually did have a kid who came to school with a gun when I was in high school.
This.
Yeah. So this was certainly a situation where luckily nothing happened, but this was early because I graduated in 2002, right? So it was really just the dawn of the school shootings at that point in time. But I luckily have never been a victim of bullying. And actually my high school was it really lacked a hierarchy. There was just separate groups, things like that. I don't know. You just bounced from group to group. People just did their thing. Or at least that was my perception of it. But this one kid, it was a really weird situation because he hung out a lot with the sporty kids. And I believe they were joking around with him a lot. And it was a borderline situation. I don't think that they were trying to bully him, but I think because he was around, it was easy to joke with him in a more extreme way. And then it was my friend Erica. I came to school and she had said, hey, so-and-so's brought a gun to school, so we need to tell somebody. And that kid who brought the gun to school had told somebody, obviously a cry for help. Obviously he wasn't feeling like he was being treated well. Maybe there was some stuff going on at home. But in that case, they searched his backpack and we didn't really see him ever again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I mean, you can't, that's obviously not a good situation for him either if he's feeling like that.
Right.
It maybe wasn't the right school for him because, like I said, I felt like it was a really welcoming and diverse school. I never felt in any way, shape, or form like that was the culture for us. But since the birth of online, I feel like bullying has come to just a whole slew of more complexities.
Yeah, I can't even begin to try to imagine what that feeling is like. And I'm not going to. Like phones, I had a phone when I was in high school, but like Instagram, I don't think had come out yet.
No.
We had MySpace.
It was the space. Damn it, Tom.
I don't envy the kids that have to deal with Instagram, TikTok, all that shit.
That's wild.
That's wild.
And that's all of Gen Z.
I have nieces and Gen Alpha and everything. That's like my nieces and nephews and shit. And I'm like, I literally don't know what your life is like. I'm chronically online, but you're chronically online and your frontal lobe is not fully developed.
Right.
So I don't know what that feels like.
It's so easy to be influenced by anyone.
Yeah.
That's where the Andrew Tates come in.
That being said, I'd like to wrap up like our book portion of it with the most significant quote from the book that you took away.
Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
There's a couple quotes that I really liked. The first one I'll say, it was, when you don't fit in, you become the person who makes it so others don't fit in either. And I thought that was really compelling. It's a pretty chilling reflection on the cycle of pain and how bullying can perpetuate harm indefinitely.
Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. So I loved that quote. And then the other one I really liked was, you don't need water to feel like you're drowning, do you? And that one, we're taking it as like a metaphor for emotional suffocation and how trauma can consume you in a way that obviously reflects the feeling of drowning. So I thought that was a really beautiful quote, a reflection of what that may or may not feel like.
I love that. The one that stood out the most to me, or the one that I feel summarizes the book the best, is from chapter 9. And it says, what if it's not the act that's horrific, but the desperation that leads to it? And I think that kind of sums up how I feel torn from either one side or the other to, am I blaming the person or am I blaming the circumstances? And honestly, it ends up being a little bit of both.
Yeah. I think that's probably the hardest part about tackling cases like this is doing it from a realistic and non-demonizing perspective.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that quote. I think it really highlights complexities because this is such like a complex topic. What I do want to try out is in one of our last episodes, we just did a decompressing one where we read out loud on a few poems. And I thought it would be cool to add like one of the excerpts from the book and see how you guys like that. So let's go ahead and get into it. So, at what point do you tell yourself that enough is enough? That the damage has already been done and whatever is left doesn't matter anymore? Peter sat in the interrogation room, his wrist shackled to the table, but he didn't feel trapped. He felt free. For the first time in his life, the names didn't echo in his ears. The laughter didn't claw at his skin. He wondered if this is what forgiveness felt like. Something you didn't deserve but claimed anyway, because no one could stop you. Across town, Josie sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. She knew that she should call someone, anyone, but the words she needed wouldn't form. She couldn't explain why she hadn't stopped it, why she hadn't said something sooner. The truth was a monster in her throat, clawing at her insides. But if she opened her mouth, she was terrified it would destroy her too. In the courtroom the next day, the families of the victims sat in their neat rows, clutching tissues and each other. They didn't cry out or scream. They just sat there, silent and stoic, like the ghosts of the children they'd lost. Alex, presiding over it all, tried to meet their eyes, but found herself looking at her daughter instead. And in that moment, she realized that the worst thing about justice, it was never going to be enough.
I think that's a perfect read.
Yeah. It really just highlights Jodi Picoult's writing style and the complexity of the book right there. There's a lot of factors.
I think that was a perfect portion of the book to read. It really summarized everything beautifully.
No, I really love the excerpt too. And without giving away the whole book, we'll probably just start cutting it off there. I know some of you guys listen to this without actually reading the book. I don't recommend that because we give a lot of spoilers. But if you have read the book, we don't want to spoil it too much because there's so much to discover and it is really quite a journey on such a relevant subject. I know that you guys are waiting for us to talk about politics because that's what we do every episode.
And there has been so much that has happened since the last time we recorded. And I promise you, we have been paying attention and watching all 26 so far executive orders that have been signed as of today.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, for self-preservation, we're gonna sit this one out for today.
Yeah, we're all processing it, guys, including Adriana and myself. Some days are good days, some days are bad days, but here's, again, what I want you to take away. There's been worse than him.
Mm-hmm.
There has been smarter than him. There has been better than him. He's not the end-all, be-all of our fate. And what I'm hoping is that if things get really bad, it'll be a catalyst to bring us together. Because right now we're just so divided.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hoping is that his presidency is just going to hit enough people to where people realize that it's not a left-right, it's an up-down.
I like that.
We're going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it today because let's just focus on this book and let's just let you know that this is a great read. It deserves your time. What's going on in the country is going to continue to go on in the country, and we're going to be here to support you and hopefully come together. Like I said, let's focus on community. Let's focus on helping each other out. Let's focus on supporting each other. When we need to fight, let's protest when we need to. Let's make podcasts when we need to. Let's make content when we need to. Mm-hmm. But most of all, let's fight it in the courts. Yeah. Let's make sure that we're supporting associations that help our rights. And you guys know that I really am not very huge fans of any political party right now. I think that the Democrats have their faults as well. I think they really lost sight of the working class. And that's unfortunate. And here we are. But we're going to support you.
We're going to keep reading banned books. We're going to keep talking about things that matter to us. We're going to keep highlighting books that bring awareness.
Yeah. And read them with us, learn with us, grow with us, because every single book that we read just arms us intellectually against this fascist regime that we find ourselves under right now. What I can say is the positive thing was he may be a fascist, but he's not very bright. So just know that we're with you. We are just processing, but we're here for you. So interact with us online. By the way, that TikTok shit was bullshit.
That TikTok shit was dumb. But we are on Red Note.
we are on Red Note. We love Red Note. I feel like the people there were so welcoming, and that was such a surprise.
Yeah, it was. And yeah, do what you need to do to take care of your mental health. Read banned books. Be the resistance by just being and showing up as your full authentic selves.
And sometimes just your own energy, albeit rebellious from the inside and maybe not externally. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe just reading banned books in your room and gaining knowledge is more your style, or maybe just being on the streets is your style.
Whatever you do, it's enough.
Yeah. Whatever you do, it's more than enough and it helps. So keep doing it, guys. In the meantime, we are going to come back and talk about the ACOTAR series next time. Because you know what? Like, here's my theory on this. One, the ACOTAR series is a banned series, mostly for the sexual content. But also, we're going to be here with you for the serious moments. And we're also just going to read books that are fun reads that we want to just reflect on sometimes, because sometimes we just need an escape. That's why we watch really good series and go to the movies, right? It's because we can't just focus on that stuff. If we focus on the negativity all the time, they win.
Yeah. Ooh, and if you haven't watched Wicked, first of all, what are you doing? But second
Where
of
have
all,
you been?
Where have you been?
Hold space for it.
We are holding space for it.
Hold my finger.
There we go. Holding space.
Which, by the way, big ups to Ariana Grande because she really killed that. And then
Cynthia Erivo.
Cynthia Erivo, phenomenal.
Literally.
Phenomenal.
Toss.
Toss, toss.
It's become my favorite thing to do around the house. Toss, toss.
Yeah, we almost named our puppy Galinda. Just
almost. Super close. She's
close.
a blonde and adorable.
And she does the toss.
She does do toss with her toys. We love you guys. Thank you for being here for us. Thank you for holding space for us as we hold space for you.
For sure. And like I said, next time, get ready for some, what did you call it earlier? Some
fairy smut.
Fairy smut. We're getting we're getting ready to dig into some fairy smut. I have a lot of opinions.
Yes, you do.
Sarah J. Maas. I wonder, is it Maas or Mass?
I don't know.
Anyway,
Mass.
We'll see you guys next episode. That'll be a really fun one.
Love you.
No matter who you are, no matter where you are, remember we love you.
We love you. Bye.